If I may be permitted to reply to that, um, one of the things that needs to be addressed within the current government, this shift in political control is so pivotal at this junction of Guyana's history that from a food policy standpoint, we could actually, and I mean we as nationals, can push Guyana into a completely different strata of food production that does not depend on heavily mechanized means of large scale agriculture. So I am talking specifically about tapping into the organic industry.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the APNU manifesto stated that they were moving towards industrial organic production. It just the term alone is problematic.
Does that make any sense?
You have a problem with these terms, Mark.
Yes, I do. I do have a serious problem with terms because then they're open for broad interpretation, and then all of a sudden it becomes industrial agriculture without the organic in it, right? So
Right.
um, that's
What would you suggest, though, Mark?
so let me get to that. For example, right now, as of 2015, the USDA issued its annual reports and showed that the organic industry in the US has grown by close to 30 billion US dollars. If you peel that back and start looking at what it's actually importing, you start finding some very tangible foods that Guyana can produce, avocado or pear, right? Other types of stuff that is wasted, right? Now, this is why I say there's a necessity to establish key infrastructure, but not all infrastructure. All right. For example, if you drive through South Rupununi, you would be your heart would pain you to see the amount of star apples and other types of high cash fruits and vegetables that are wasting.
Just like our
Right.
coconuts.
Right? And Colin gave an excellent example about coconuts. Now, let me kind of cut through all of that and get to some very targeted solution ideas here. For one, artisanal industries are where I think communities can receive the highest level of empowerment without getting wrapped up into government politics and rhetoric. The question that needs to be addressed, whether it's on this panel or within a national policy, I am focusing specifically on agriculture. I don't want anything to do with anything else. Is looking at how do you create spaces for microloans or ways of which young people, and Guyana's demographics is very young, acquire the necessary funding to go into artisanal industries. This is where the question comes into play. And this is a question that should be posed to the diaspora. Are there members of the diaspora who are interested in looking at providing small base loans at very low interest rates for artisanal industries? I mean, one excellent example. I'm not too sure if you had them on your show as yet, Colin, but look at Pandama Wines on the Linden Highway. This is a couple that
No,
was
I've
funded
never
by.
had them on.
I didn't hear you.
I've never had them on, Mark. But
Okay.
that's an excellent question you just asked.
Let me conclude then, because then I'm going on my thing again. But if you look at what they're doing, they're taking fermentations and turning it into bottled wines that are of export quality. All right. And don't get me wrong, even within indigenous communities, you are finding a lot of high-end ideas that just cannot get enough traction because one, the villagers are being forced to convert their ideas into a development rhetoric portfolio. Two, the financiers who are somewhat giving some level of financing is taking up their ideas and trying to scale it up without them feeling comfortable with it. And three, there is not, and this is where basic infrastructure is necessary to carry these particular goods, services, whatever you want to categorize them as, within spaces that have potential markets. And the reverse is already happening. I mean, if you look at the farine industry right now, Brazilian farine is steeped right throughout the Rupununi. But look, I'll stop right there before I put myself into more hot water.
I'll jump in here. I mean, I assume we have these discussions and forums to share ideas because we're all committed to our country and want to see it move forward. I understand your point, Mark, in the sense that looking at it on a macro scale and talking about the development of the entire country is sometimes overwhelming when you think, well, where do you start? You touch on a very important point, and that is that I would hope that this program that Selwyn is organizing will actually help in this whole process of moving Guyana forward. And in my view, we must be able to, if we can sit down and we can talk and intellectualize forever about where we should be and shouldn't be, et cetera, et cetera. But I think that if we can encourage people in the diaspora or friends of Guyana to help us in every way, down from the community levels up, we can begin to, one brick at a time, change Guyana. The Guyana Foundation has just very recently symbolically adopted the village of Hague Back. Hague Back is predominantly rice. The farmlands and the infrastructure in the village are poor. The drainage is poor. The younger farmers don't want to plant rice because they don't think there's a future in rice for them. They want to go to the backlands to plant cash crops. They can't bring the cash crops out because, of course, the road is in bad shape. So what we've done is we've adopted that village. We have started all the budgets to repair the roads, to prepare the roads to the farmlands, correct the drainage, build a community center for the young people, improve the signage in the village, put in solar-powered lighting so the farmers, when they're coming out late at night with produce, are safe because they can see where they're going. And so this is a project we've put on the table. So far, we've had several persons who are non-Guyanese and some are Guyanese who've offered to assist in this project. So I'm of the view that if we can take Hague Back, for instance, and in a few months' time, put on the table something that we've done where it's actually changed lives. That's one village down. So let's move to the next village and the next village and the next village, okay? And there are people, as you rightly said, Mark, there are people in the diaspora who have an incredible knowledge in the field of agriculture. Perhaps they might want to, come back and assist in some way. So I honestly, where my mind is at, is that the government as such has its national policies, et cetera, that it must necessarily put in place. But those of us who have some sort of commitment and love for our country, I feel we can begin to tangibly get in there, roll up our sleeves, get in there, and start to make the changes. We can't sit back and wait for the government to get everything right and use all the right language and the right documents and the right focus, because truthfully, we could be sitting here having this discussion in the next 20 years and we might still be in the same position. So my thing is we should not waste a single minute. Let the government do what they have to do. Let them prepare the ground for us. We've asked for servant leadership. Let them be that. Let them perform. And I think as individuals and as concerned Guyanese across the globe, all of us, every single day, somebody who's of Guyanese parentage turns on the television, the computer, goes to see what's happening in Stabroek News, Kaieteur News. They check in. Why do they check in? They check in because they care, because they're connected to that land, because that land means something to them. It's the brightest light they have in their life. So if you're seeing all of that, my position is this, that I'm not really one of these kind of people that sit down. There are many things that are not right, and we could continue to try to tweak them all to get them right. But time is passing, and lives are being influenced by the fact that those people need to move on. Those young farmers in Hague Back, they're an amazing bunch of young men. And the other day I said to them, listen, when they came to me and said, well, can the Guyana Foundation help in any way? I said, look, y'all can't sit back and wait for the government and the ministry and this one. Get up and start representing yourselves. And, they all dressed in their Sunday best, and a whole delegation of them came to the Pegasus when we installed our patron and so on to represent themselves, And since then, they've been meeting and so on. So on the ground, people are willing to engage and to begin the process of change. And I think out of these discussions in forums like this, if we can encourage other Guyanese across the world, in and out of Guyana, to continue assisting you, Mark, and all of us, we have
look, I think Selwyn said it best. All of us on this panel are either in Guyana or traveling back and forth on a constant basis.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I really think we, as the diaspora, even though as much tension as it is to be branded as a diaspora Guyanese, that needs to be pay attention to is also the interventionalist strategy and being conscientious of what communities are saying. And I want to hit on something very important here in regards to research. Some of your previous panelists, Selwyn, in the past have talked about the necessity for research. Look, there is a lot of research that's already being done in numerous spaces in Guyana, but a place to house it all for people to be able to traverse, go through local policymakers, potential diaspora investors, and so on, academics especially, access that is somewhat of a problem.
Yeah.
Now, even though it's supposed to be housed at the EPA, getting that information or knowing who's doing research where and et cetera, is still very difficult to even be synced to the national libraries overseas. I mean, this is where those type of movements can be done, where accessing crucial information is important before major decisions are made. For example, if a major foundation is coming to Guyana and they want to go and adopt a village and so on, what are the research that is being done in that space already and how to make an informed decision so that you save resources and so on. And these are the small little tweaks. I mean, I'm not trying to put extra pressure on a brand new government that has a lot of years of things to clean up. But these are crucial elements within the society that needs to be addressed very quickly so that the diaspora can act. It's not like we're sitting here and not doing anything, but we are well informed on how to make an informed decision. And that is where we need to get access to crucial information. I mean, right now,
Mark, let me bring Renata in on this just for a second. I'm gonna get back to you, but I want to get Renata's view on what is she lives in Guyana. What are you seeing on the ground, Renata? I think you have been involved in some type of entrepreneurial project at some point. What are you seeing among the people, among women, that gives you hope or encourages you to move on in this path towards entrepreneurship?
One of the things is that more and more women are getting involved in business, getting involved in beginning their own business, which is at the heart of entrepreneurship. But whilst that is good in itself, we're still facing some hiccups. Things like one person was explaining to me yesterday, he says, when I put my stuff on the internet, I may get an order for 3,000 vases or 3,000 items of stuff. He says, I can't scale up my production that quickly to get that sort of thing going. So I will need to get financing and affordable financing. One of the discussions or one of the themes that we're talking around is the involvement of the diaspora. Currently, we depend a lot on grant funding or on foreign funding to provide low interest loans to the people of Guyana who want to get involved in business, particularly at the startup level. And I was just thinking that one of the ways that the diaspora can get involved in is to start a mutual fund, start a venture capitalist fund. If everybody in the diaspora, if every Guyanese in the diaspora gave $5 to this fund, and this fund was for instance, mandated to provide small loans to small and startup businesses in Guyana. You can frame it however you want it. If you want to concentrate on women, if you want to concentrate on innovative businesses, you want to concentrate on indigenous businesses in Guyana, and give them a small, present them with affordable financing, which of course they will repay, so it becomes a revolving fund. I think that's something that most people can get behind. It doesn't take a lot for everybody to give $5.
Mark, you asked a brilliant question, and one of the things I'm going to ask you to do when I post these recordings on Facebook, to make that statement, ask that question, post that question beneath it, because I think it's a question that needs to be asked over and over. Are people in the diaspora anybody in the diaspora willing to participate in funding or commit some kind of?
So look, let me tell you something. The issue with macro economies is that it is a macro economy. Okay, let me explain that. What I am talking about is a community level initiative. And okay, you know what? Let me strip.
No, we get that, Mark. Mark, we got that. We got that.
No. Let me. I'm fleshing out something here.
Okay.
Right? I'm going to try and strip my vocabulary of the term initiative for a second. But what I'm trying to get at is that there is this assumption that the diaspora needs to go in, right? We need to roll up our sleeves and go down there and so on, which is very necessary on a multiple level of fronts for people who have experience doing that.
Mm-hmm.
The question that I had brought up earlier in our conversation is about providing financing, and Renata just hit on it again, for the Chinaman at Linden Park who is trying to increase his production by buying a cart, but he doesn't know how to come up with whatever collateral the bank is offering, or because of some small agriculture agency that requires him to fill out an elaborate set of forms to be able to acquire a small amount of funding, there is no transition or someone to interpret that to him. So this is where the diaspora plays very crucial roles. Kickstarter is a great platform to mount these things onto a digital platform where Guyanese people from wherever they are able to sort of feel it out for themselves and see where this is going. But then the question comes into play, who is that person? Is that going to be going and getting those networks done and so on? And this is where the diaspora plays a very important role. Okay? Finding these ideas, giving them their autonomy, that's very important, and then giving them a platform for them to be able to access funding that is equitable for them and their interpretation of community development.
So Priya, what do you think about this this idea? You're familiar with large organizations and funding and so on. What do you think about what Renata just proposed and what Mark has underscored?
Are you talking to me, Selwyn?
Yes, Priya. Yeah.
Yes. No, I think Renata has a good idea, and I think that certainly certain a sector of the Guyanese diaspora might be interested in a project of that nature, but in general terms, they're going to be people, and I would like to speak with paint with a larger brushstroke in the sense that there are many ways that we can involve the diaspora in the development of Guyana. This is just one area. Not everybody will be able to work in that particular way.
Right.
Some of them will, and some of them will be very willing to do that should they be approached, or if there is an avenue for them to do it, I'm sure they'd be interested. But there are other ways that the diaspora can get involved as well. In skills training for Guyanese. There are people all over the world who have skills that we need, and they cannot leave their homes in Toronto, London, wherever they live, to come home and say, move lock, stock, and barrel and move back to Guyana. But perhaps they can come back and set, work and exchange skills in a certain way and continue to come back regularly and so on and so forth. So there's all different levels in which people can assist in the general scheme of things, because we keep speaking of this diaspora as though it's one big set of. It's a large. I mean, what does that mean? What does that mean? There's a barber who may be in Scarborough, in Ontario, cutting hair, and he's been doing that since God knows when. But he loves Guyana. Perhaps he could come home and get into his village and teach a young chap how to be a good barber, and maybe that guy could earn his keep in the village by being a good barber. You know what I mean? So we have to speak in real terms, like, so that everybody can understand how urgent and how important it is for us all to become engaged.
And Supriya, how does one get involved? Supriya, how does one get involved with your foundation if they want to contribute?
Basically, they go to www.guyanafoundation.com and there's a button that says take action, and you register your name and you put your address and so on, your email address, and from there essentially you can volunteer to work in our sunrise centers, which will be opened up shortly. We had, at the beginning of this year, we launched the projects for 2016. One of them was the Guyana Heroes Project, where we're rewarding community leaders across the country who are doing valuable community work that goes unnoticed. But we've managed to get quite a purse going, and we'll be having a selection process where we, present them with an award. So there's the Guyana Heroes Project on the ground right now. There's the Hague Back Village Renewal Project, which needs a lot of assistance. And there may be people across the world who can help us with that, who have agricultural skills, who have skills in terms of road building, who have expertise in agriculture. There are myriad ways that they can help. There are women in that village who need to understand how to come up with some sort of cottage industry that they can sink their teeth into. We need sports equipment in that village. So that's Hague Back. Then we have the Sunrise Centers, which will be unveiled very shortly. The Sunrise Centers will be buildings, actual permanent buildings in the regions in Guyana that have been hard hit by suicide. Our first center will be in Essequibo, and then we will hopefully move it to Berbice and Baramita. And what those centers will do.
Or Kokwani, I think that 50 years from now, it shouldn't matter. I think the young people that I talk to, and I have an opportunity to travel, they really don't matter. They don't really care about what has happened in the past or what have been. I think the next 50 years, we should really concentrate on nation building, getting the things right, providing for our people, whether it's in entrepreneurial, and we have a lot of great ideas. But oftentimes I keep on asking, why can these ideas not materialize? And when we look back in it, we see that a lot of our leaders, they tend to bring back these historicals that stymie our development.
That is why, I hate to interrupt you, but that is why I keep harping on the fact that we can begin at the community level, but if we all become engaged,
right,
Guyana in 75 years' time, we won't be sitting having this discussion on this computer. We will be faced with a country that's alive, villages, communities will come alive, and we will all help. But we almost have to relearn how to think, because for years, and I'm also guilty of this, for years, you always sort of sat back and think, oh gosh, things can never change, what the government can do. And you're always looking at the government, and if the government and the government and the government. But I think each of us has to start to, relearn how to think about Guyana now, irrespective of what the politicians are doing at this point in time. I think if there are more of us than there are of politicians, if you want to put it that way. And if each of us engage
Renata, would you like to
in the best way we can. Trust me. True. It's true. But we're so used to sitting back and waiting for the politicians to find a job. And if they don't do what you said, like this lot have just gotten in, and we're going to be okay with them for a little while. But by next year, oh my gosh, we're going to start to criticize them. They didn't do this, they didn't do that. And what are we doing? Sitting down waiting for them to do it. My position is you don't need, let them do the work that they were voted in to do, which is to clean up the country. When you land there to do investments and you need to go to the Lands and Registry Department or whatever it's called, you must be able to go through there and deal with people in a accountable, clear manner. That's the role of the government, to make sure that department functions, make sure the Ministry of Finance functions, make sure all of these different agencies function and that they're totally transparent. They have to do that work now. And so I think it is unfair for all of us to sit back and wait to see when the government is going to, how they're going to. They have a duty to perform, but what I'm holding on to is that just imagine what would happen to Guyana if every single Guyanese who loves that country were to say, you know what, let me see what I can do, how I can do it. Stop talking, stop waiting, and stop waiting to live, but start in some way, however small. If it is to go home for your summer holiday and do a workshop to teach somebody how to be a barber. I'm going back to this barber from Scarborough. you did something. You did something. So my
Renata,
position
you,
is
I want to.
75 years from now, let's bring life into the country.
I need to interject something here for a moment. First of all, I do agree with Colin to a certain extent that Guyana is riddled with the notion of our historical groundings. And I'm using that term in a certain sense because Guyana has had a history of state oppression
Yeah.
to free actors, thinkers, critical thinkers. This is an established fact. So to just assume that we have to move forward, there is a certain level, I would argue, a certain level of apprehension of how to engage with the state, because this is not a new party, this is the state. And some of the actions that have been happening within the last, within their first tenure, it is somewhat worrying for someone that is already apprehensive. The question that comes into play, don't get me wrong, I go home all the time and I still refer to it as home. One of the things that needs to be looked at, and I do agree that the state needs to focus its efforts on ensuring that the state functions
Right.
within its capacity so that I can get my driver's license renewed without having to
Absolutely.
circulate a little. Well, I'm not going to say what I have to circulate. Or that the taxi drivers who are driving up and down on the Linden Highway trying to make a living don't have to consistently give something in unofficial toll to the to the officers who are in charge. But one of the things that I feel we need to peel back as well is that even though the state has had a history of oppression, there has been such an upsurge. There has been, and there's still a continual upsurge of industry within the communities that it's just sometimes we're not paying attention to it. So, right? So, and, you know, in those small spaces, I'm talking about, say, for example, people who are now in the quarantine doing roti delivery, right? Into, it's amazing. I mean, yes, it shows people are being inscripted into the labor force or may not want to get caught up making roti.
Mark, I have to cut you. Hate that I have to cut you off a little bit here, but I want to bring Renata in because time, you know, we run out of time. So Renata, I want to give you the last word.
All right, we started out wanting to know why entrepreneurship is so important. We're a small country, we're only 750,000 people, and I've probably added a 10,000 there. But entrepreneurship and the thinking or the way when you think when you're in entrepreneurship is something that needs to be encouraged. It needs to be fostered in Guyana, not only for the private citizen, but also for state actors, for the ministries. Whenever you try to get something done in the ministry, the way they think about doing something is so onerous. And it really puts a burden on those in the private sector, because if you have to deal with people in the ministries and you have to, you get the heebie-jeebies. It is important for the government to see its role as a facilitator. That if you want to encourage entrepreneurship, you need to be able to facilitate that by the institutions that you create. You need to make sure that they function. You don't want to wait forever for your driver's license, but you don't want to wait until the budget passes, until you can get a license to do business, a shop license or whatever. You know, those kinds of things, it boggles my mind. Why do I have to wait until we decide whether or not the fees are going to be raised in 2016 before I can get my license? Sell me the license when the fees goes up. Those who buy it after that date, they pay an increased fee. You know, things like that really, they just add extra stress to life here, and we're already in a hot zone. But we have to become a lot more entrepreneurial in our thinking throughout. This is across the board: government, private sector, the ordinary citizen. One of the things Mark talked about, the roti, one of the things that I like is to see that Canter truck driving through the village, fully loaded, grocery store, right? You don't have to leave and go to town or go to the public road. The grocery store is coming to your door, your gap. The grocers,
with new tires, no used tires.
Mark, Alan is going to get you for that.
I'm hopeful because one, we're going to have local government elections, and that, even if it's a badly run local government election, is going to create a sea change in the way people think, because the politics now has become local. And you now have local people that you can hold accountable for making sure that your